Good morning, church. Oh, I'm so glad to be here with you all this morning. Again, my name is Kip Martin. Pastor Arlene asked me if I would bring you all the message this morning, and I am honored to do so. I'm sort of an apprentice around here. Now, we've been studying the Gospel of Mark these past few months, and just like we've been seeing Jesus training his apprentices, we call them the disciples, to go and spread his message of hope, I'm learning the ropes of being a pastor through being a volunteer intern here. Now, I really hope and pray that someday I will be a real live pastor. But till then, I get to practice on all of you. Thank you. And I'm glad you all let me do that, so let's see how this goes today, okay? Now, in the past 10 years, I've been blessed to go on 2 bucket list trips, and you're going to hear a little bit about both of them today. The first one was in the summer of 2013. My wife Gwen and I were blessed to be able to go to Rome, Italy. Now, I know when this was because it was the summer before I got sober. Now, part of that trip, we visited Rome and Vatican City. In that place was so much church history. I mean, there is so much history there that it's hard to remember everything that you saw. But I do remember that as we went into St. Peter's Basilica, a little chapel, first chapel on the right, is one of history's greatest works of art, the Pietà. In 1498, a relatively unknown artist in his early 20s named Michelangelo was commissioned to create a life-size sculpture of a famous painting of Mary holding her son Jesus right after he was taken down from the cross. For nearly 2 years, Michelangelo painstakingly carved this magnificent sculpture out of a solid block of marble. That's a big job. Michelangelo stated he had never before seen such a perfect piece of marble. His vision of the scene was completely different from depictions of other artists. He used to say he saw the sculpture inside, he merely chipped away at that which wasn't his vision. Day after day, the great artist slowly revealed his masterpiece until its big reveal at a festival called the Jubilee in the year 1500. It's the only one of Michelangelo's countless masterpieces that he actually signed. And oh my, it is amazing to see in person. Well, today, we're in part 9 of an author and artist named Mark's work. Week by week, we're slowly drawing closer to the big reveal of Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God. Throughout each of Mark's 678 verses, he carefully and deliberately reveals more and more of Jesus' true identity. Today, we're going to cover nearly a full chapter as we get to the pivotal moment in the first half of Mark's biography. Today, we're just about midway through the book of Mark. Essentially, this is part 1 of Mark's 2-part big reveal of who Jesus is. If this were a Broadway play, Act 1 would end today, and we would break for intermission to catch our breath. Now, the second half, Act 2 of Mark's story of Jesus, takes us to Jesus' passion and death on the cross. And in case you're curious, spoiler alert here, the second and final big reveal will take place on Easter Sunday. As Christians today, we already know Jesus' identity as the Son of God and long-awaited Messiah. He gives us that in the very first sentence of Mark 1:1, the beginning of the good news about Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God. From there, though, we're plunged right into the story of those who cannot quite seem to get who Jesus is. Confusion about Jesus fills the first half of Mark's biography. I mean, the crowds think he's a magic man, capable of healing the sick. The religious leaders, well, they're threatened. The politicians are suspicious. Jesus' disciples themselves cannot quite figure him out either. The confusion of who Jesus is extends even to his family. They're furious with Jesus' claims and want him to come back home, even if they have to force him to do so. Only the demons can correctly identify Jesus as the Son of God. Yet they do this not out of worship and humility, but fear that Jesus can and will conquer them. Mark uses each of these misses to reveal more and more of the true identity of Jesus. It's like peeling an onion, one layer at a time, or chipping away at the marble like Michelangelo to reveal the beautiful sculpture trapped within. Mark reveals to us the beauty of our Messiah Jesus. Jesus is revealed as the beloved Son of God at his baptism. Jesus declares that he's come to announce a different kind of kingdom, a kingdom not of this world, a kingdom not of the sword to fight, but of the table to serve. In Act 1, this different kind of king drives out evil spirits and heals people from disease. Jesus, the Messiah and Son of God, eats with disreputable people and challenges religious bigotry. In Act 1 of Mark, Jesus is revealed as a different kind of teacher who teaches a different kind of message, inviting everyone, regardless of their religious status, political power, moral uprightness, financial condition, and even ethnic background to join his movement. Today, around here, we call that the last, the least, the lost, the hurting, and the broken. You see, in Act 1 of Mark, Jesus is a different kind of king who embodies a different kind of kingdom. So this morning, we're at the climax and end of Act 1. It begins about halfway through Mark 6. Earlier, Jesus had sent out the ragtag group of 12, we call the disciples. He sent them out 2 by 2 on their first mission trip. Jesus empowered them to have authority over demons. And surprise of all surprises, Mark reports that this messed up, insecure, backstabbing group drove out many demons and anointed many sick people with oil and healed them in verse 13. Just a little sidebar here. When God uses messed up, insecure, backstabbing people like you and me to do his work, that's all grace. Amen? So Jesus gathers the disciples for a debrief and report back what happened on their short-term mission trip. And as they do that, a huge crowd show up. Now, by huge, I mean 5,000 men and women and children, which probably means about 15,000 people. And Jesus feeds the stadium-sized crowd with just 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Now, to Mark's first readers, all of this would have connected to the Jewish heavyweight hero Moses. Remember, Moses was used of God to feed the wandering Hebrews manna and quail when they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. And it's as if Mark is saying to them, we all know how important Moses was and is, but he's nothing compared to Jesus. The intensity of the big reveal, it's picking up. Moses had come to deliver. Now, deliver just means taken from something to something. You know, Moses had come to deliver God's people from captivity, slavery, bondage, and chains in Egypt. Jesus has come to deliver and set people free from much greater captivity, slavery to the powers of sin and death. This Jesus is a different kind of king. After the feeding of the masses, the disciples left in a boat, and Jesus, as he often did, he went to pray. Then shortly after that is when Jesus walked on water out to his disciples. Now, we spoke a few weeks ago how the Sea of Galilee was dark and demonic. Jesus walking on the water here, it's a powerful message, showing again his authority over those demons. He walks over the demons. Now, if you're following along in your Bible, I'm going to skip ahead through the rest of Mark 6, all of Mark 7, and we'll go about 22 verses into Mark 8. We could spend years or a lot more time walking even more slowly through this amazing gospel. In fact, if you're interested, we're going to start the Bible study back up on Wednesday nights, this coming Wednesday, right after Eat, Pray, Love, so come join us. Remember, we're on our way to the big climax of Act 1. However, Mark takes us on a seeming detour when he tells the story of Jesus as he opens the eyes of the blind, right before the big reveal. 2 weeks ago was open your ears. Now it's open your eyes. Mark is very meticulous how he puts together the stories. Priorities matter. Jesus also wants to open the eyes of the first disciples, the first readers, as well as all of us, to the reality of who he is and that he wants to be in our lives. All of this sets up the final moments of Act 1. Look at me with Mark 8:27. This little detail is extremely important. if we are to understand the full impact of the climax of Act 1. That Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. Mark includes the detail that Jesus and the disciples arrived in Caesarea Philippi. Where this happened is important. The divinity, the true identity of who Jesus was, is revealed at Caesarea Philippi. This was not a spiritually neutral place. This was a shrine to Caesar, shrines to other false gods. Now, that other bucket list trip I told you about, my wife and I went on a trip to Israel a few years ago, and we actually went here to Caesarea Philippi. So we've got a couple of pictures. The first one has, the hand of our guide, Zayev, pointing to what the place would have looked like back in the day with all the different shrines and everything. And the second picture is what they called the Grotto of Pan. It used to be filled with water, and they actually used to do human sacrifices in there. It's said to be the gates of Hades or hell, is what the Bible calls. And then the last picture shows all the little grottos to all the different little lesser gods where they had shrines to. So the Bible says the gates of hell will not overcome it. As they walk, Jesus inquires of his disciples what they believe about him. We can peek into their conversation again in verse 27. On the way, he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others, one of the prophets." Jesus asks his disciples an opinion poll from the crowds about his identity. You know, they give a list that includes his cousin John the Baptist, the miracle-working prophet Elijah, and a generic prophet. It's not bad company to be in. But Jesus isn't satisfied. He makes it personal to the disciples and asks them one more question. "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" And now here comes the big reveal of Act 1. Will the disciples get it right? The core of the text. "But what about you guys?" What Peter, open mouth, insert foot Peter, says next, in a city where political leaders are gods and their religion kills children, it's one of the most powerful moments in all of human history. Say it with me. Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." At this moment, Peter gets it right. Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, about whom Mark is writing this good news biography. If this were Extreme Home Makeover, the crowd would be cheering, "Move that bus." Peter gets it. The celebration should now begin, right? The Messiah is here. The disciples are actually with the Savior of the world. They were next to the most powerful person in all of history. They had made it. Imagine what would have been going through their minds. But just as they started the party, the big reveal falls flat. They move that bus, there's no mansion on the lot. Now remember, these disciples, they're not quite the same guys who literally give up their lives for Jesus in the years to come. They're rough around the edges, and quite frankly, rough to the core. Been there. They're likely envisioning that being on Jesus' team means being close to seats of political and religious power. But when the bus moves, there isn't a castle or a crown. Get this, there's a cross. Read with me how Jesus replies to Peter's correct answer about his true identity. Ready? Go. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this. Jesus is a different kind of Messiah, teacher, and king. He would win the hearts of a sinful, broken planet, not by climbing the ladder of success or ascending to places of power, but by giving his life on a criminal's cross on a garbage heap outside of Jerusalem. And surely the disciples are ready to fully embrace this way of Jesus, right? Well, listen to what Peter says next. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Peter's not having it, is he? Well, Jesus talks about suffering, being rejected and killed. I imagine Peter rather naively saying, "No, that's not the way this is going to go. You're the king. We're your boys. You've got a kingdom to get started. If anyone's going to die, it's going to be those that are persecuting us." Sounds a little far-fetched, right? Not really. It's not that far off. Mark says, Peter rebuked Jesus. Now, the word rebuke, that's just a Bible word that means strong disagreement. Peter rebuked Jesus, then Jesus rebuked Peter. Jesus is, in a sense, putting Peter back in line when he said, "Get behind me." Peter here is not yet a leader. Later, he'll be a pioneer of Christianity and leader in the church, but not yet. Now he's still a follower, and Jesus tells him to get back in line. Jesus' full rebuke says, "Get behind me, Satan." Ooh, that's a little strong. And then he said, "You do not have the concerns of God, only the concerns of humans." You know, Mark is describing the process of Jesus revealing himself. This was a process. The process continues, and there's still more to be revealed. And I heard many of you a little while ago when we mentioned Choose Recovery on Mondays. I too am in 12-step recovery from addiction to drugs and alcohol. You'll recognize this phrase of "more will be revealed." This is a multi-part revelation, though. This becomes an open secret. Everything's in place. The stage is set. When Jesus says he's going to suffer, that's what Peter's kicking back at. He's still a different kind of Messiah. He talks openly with the disciples now, saying, "This is who I am. Who do you say I am? And now will your eyes and ears be open from now on as to who I am, with your hearts no longer hardened." Jesus goes from "who do you say I am?" and now he has a different kind of deliverer message with different demands. In what are some of the most important words ever spoken in human history, Jesus points us to his real identity and purpose. Read with me what Jesus says next. "Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, 'Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels.'" This is what happens in us. He reveals himself to us. Then we hear Jesus say, "Take up your cross and follow me." When Jesus says, "Get behind me, Satan," he's saying, "Hey, you're not in charge here. Get behind me and follow me. If you want to follow me, take up your cross. To save your life, lose it." All of this Jesus talk about losing your soul, it's not about going to hell in the hereafter. It's about living in hell in the here and now. It's about the here and now, not the then and there. Jesus is telling his apprentices in the 1st and 21st century that it's foolish to embrace the ways of the world, the ways of money, alcohol, drugs, sex, and power, and expect to have a robust, flourishing life now. The way of Jesus is the way to full and abundant living by denying oneself. It's daily taking up the cross and following Jesus. This is the radically different kind of king and kingdom that Jesus invites us to follow and be a part of. If you want to live in a different kind of kingdom, then follow a different kind of king as a different kind of disciple. This is a kingdom of love and sacrifice. This is a kingdom of losing to win. It's a kingdom of being last to be first. Jesus is take it or leave it. This is what it is. We don't face persecution like the disciples did back in the day. What we do face is living a shallow, meaningless, empty life. We have it worse because it's more seductive. Jesus is saying this is life or death. Those of you who are in recovery with me get this. Recovery is life or death as well. So we do things, just the facts. But a life with meaning, the alternative is easier here for us. Last week we had our missionary partners here. Just one of the stories we heard was from Marie Shockey in Juarez, Mexico. And she talked about where one of their churches, during a church service, cartel gunmen came in during a funeral service looking for one person, and they killed and injured many. I say we have it too easy here. Jesus, though, is saying, do it or don't. Recovery, too, is do it or don't. This is it, life or death. I ask a question when someone asks me to sponsor them. Are you willing to go to any length for sobriety? That's like, are you willing to pick up your cross? Here we have either a kingdom or a thingdom. Give it up. Let it all go. What does it mean for us? I mean, we have stuff. What should we be doing? What does it mean for comfortable Americans to take up their cross? Jesus insists that they must deny themselves and be prepared to die. Now, that was very important for the early church. If they want to preserve their life, they must ultimately give it up anyway. We're all going to die someday. But when I gave up my old ways of drinking and drugging, I gave up my life of the world. I can say, though, I've gained a life beyond my wildest dreams. I'm up here. I mean, come on. Now, let me tell you what it requires of us. We must have a posture of willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness. If the healing of a blind man sets up the requirements, might it be something like, open your eyes? Might it be a prayer? Something like, God, open my eyes that I might see you as a different kind of deliverer, and understanding your kingdom, and inviting me into a different kind of living or following. Amen? Jesus then is encouraging his followers, but also correcting and realigning them. And he's preparing them. Now they see in part. Their eyes have been opened. And in due course, more will be revealed. For us, now more is being revealed. Are you sure you still want to join? They didn't know about the resurrection to come. We do. We know the end. We know it all. So more will be revealed means different for them. But circumstances don't keep you from knowing a different kind of kingdom. The message is still relevant. This transcends circumstances. You can be homeless and be a citizen of the kingdom of heaven. For the first hearers of Lay Down Your Life, if you want to follow me, and to the readers who were in the first century living under Caesar Nero, and to us who are suffering under the kingdom of thingdom, we're still called to lay down our life and follow Jesus. As we sang earlier, wake up, sleeper. Open your eyes to the new king and kingdom. More will be revealed to all of us. And it's life or death, whether we know it or not. It's recovery. It is what it is. No matter what you think or feel about it, open your eyes. Accept it. And no matter how you suffer, laying down your life is the way to love God, love yourself, and love others. Here's the deal. You'll gain your life. That's why you want to do this. My eyes are being opened by Jesus. Jesus is a deliverer, whether I respond or not. Jesus is a different kind of king, whether I realize it or not. And my response is being a different kind of disciple, if I so choose. What does it mean to give ourselves up in our context? More will be revealed. Opening our eyes to a different facet of knowing Jesus. To the person who's just coming to Jesus, know that he's a different kind of king. To the person who is seeking community, we need a different kind of kingdom, one that we strive for here at Grace Church. Choose to follow Jesus, and our whole life means being a different kind of disciple. We're called to be different, self-denying. Open my eyes to being a self-denying, cross-bearing follower of Jesus. Oh, it's worth it. I can attest my life has changed for the better by making this choice daily. I'm not perfect at it, But our response to Jesus as deliverer needs to be open my eyes to see a different kind of king, embrace a different kind of kingdom, and become a different kind of disciple. Now I'd like to invite Pastor Arlene today to lead us in a time of remembering Jesus, our different kind of king, and dedicating ourselves to his different kind of kingdom and becoming different kinds of disciples through taking communion together.